Over the years, Dr. Pittman has overseen an impressive operation managing 7 labs across 4 states, leading a team of 2,800 federal employees and guiding a research portfolio valued at $2.6 billion annually. As he approaches the end of his tenure and prepares for retirement, we're excited to delve into his remarkable career, his contributions to the field of engineering, and to reflect on his ERDC journey and the significant collaborations he has fostered along the way. So, the title of the show this morning is Bridging Innovation and Leadership. Welcome, Dr. Pittman.
Hey, good morning, Annette. It's great to be here.
Good morning. That was a big old introduction.
Yes.
It was probably the biggest introduction I've done for anyone on this show.
Oh, my gosh. Saying. It takes so much explaining. Yes. Well, it's great. It's great to be here.
Well, I mean, you do have a legacy that you've done through all your different ventures in your life. And so we're going to start out with part of that. Dr. Pittman, what initially sparked your interest in engineering, and how did that passion lead you to pursue a career in this field?
Wow, that's a great question, and I get it all the time. So I grew up, let me just start at the beginning. So I grew up in Beaumont, Mississippi, a little bitty town. It's on Highway 98. It's like 1,000 people when I'm there, and 999 when I leave. If you've ever been from Hattiesburg to Mobile on 98, you sort of pass it and don't even realize it. So anyway, that's where I grew up. So my mother's there, 2 sisters, brother, and my father, and we grew up there. My daddy was a contractor. So he did like small scale construction, like box culverts, small bridges, and that sort of thing. And so when I grew up, I was working with him in the summers, building small bridges and culverts and tying steel, building forms, and pouring concrete when I was a teenager working with him. So I remember one night we were all sitting at the supper table, and we were just talking, and Daddy said, "Son, I think you need to be an engineer." And I said, "Okay, Daddy, well, what is that?" And he said, "Well, you know that guy with the white shirt and the white hat? It was a state aid project,
Right.
So the state engineer was coming down on Fridays." He says, "Hey, put this pile over here, put this beam over here, do these sort of things." And I said, "Oh, okay, so he's the boss man then." He said, "I guess so, son." And I said, "Okay, good." And that's what I thought an engineer was.
Right.
So
and a lot of times we don't listen to our parents.
I know, exactly. Well, I listen to mine.
Okay.
And then I was always like working with my hands. I like building stuff, and I like carpentry and all that kind of stuff. And so I guess they kind of saw that in me. And I listened to them. I said, "Okay, I guess I'll go be an engineer." I mean, and on a small high school. I mean, my graduating class was like 40 people, something like that. And it wasn't really the expectation that you would even go to college, much less
really
go to engineering school.
Okay.
But something about my parents, all 4 kids, they expected us to go to college from the very youngest age I can remember. And so it was in our mind the whole time. We were going to college. To be what, we didn't know, but I found out engineering for me.
Okay. Well, then, can you share a bit about your educational background? And were there any pivotal moments or mentors during your studies that shaped your path?
Yes. So as I said, I grew up in a small town, small high school, Beaumont High School. It doesn't even exist anymore. It's that small. It's part of Perry Central Consolidated High School, Perry County, Mississippi. But anyway, so I had some great, high school teachers. I remember Miss Robinson. She was my English teacher, and she really had command of the classroom. She was very good. I credit anything I know about English today to Miss Robinson, my senior English teacher, and she sort of inspired people to do better and be the best you could be. So I kind of knew I was going to college, and so I knew I was going to do engineering, and Mississippi State was probably going to be my destination. Mm-hmm. I'd never been there before. I just knew about it, and I said, but USM in Hattiesburg, University of Southern Mississippi,
was close.
Close. I could commute and live at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's 30 miles away. So that's what I did my first 2 years. My sister was already going there. She was 1 year older than me. She was going to be like an education major. So we could ride together, commute together, 30 miles away. And they had a pre-engineering curriculum.
Okay.
So there was a guy there who was like an admissions counselor. And back then, I'm not sure if you still have to do it, but you had to take like an admission exam or something to go to the university. So I took it, and evidently I didn't do very well.
Uh-oh,
at least on the mathematics.
Okay.
So he looked at my scores. And he said, "Son, you want to be an engineer? This is not good." And I said, "Well, sir, what's wrong?" He says, "Well, your math isn't very good." Well, in Beaumont High School back then, the highest math you had was like algebra 2 maybe. There was no geometry, there's no trig, there's no calculus, there was no anything like that. So when I got to that part of the exam, I'm like, well, what is this? I didn't know, so I just left it blank. Right. So I didn't score. So he said, son, you need to start in something called Mickey Mouse Math. That's exactly what it was called.
Was it really?
Okay, good. That sounds fun.
That was a subject, wasn't it?
That was a subject, Mickey Mouse Math. So I started out, and it was self-paced study, mathematics, fall of 1979, I guess. And me and my sister was taking it too. She was an education major, so that was the class that they took. But I was right there with her. I was in engineering, pre-engineering, and I was taking it. And I said, this is so easy. 1 + 1 = what? Blank, 2. Okay, it's like that. And I said, this college thing is going to be so easy. But it put me way behind the math because I should have started in at least college algebra, probably geometry or trig. And so anyway, I got kind of way behind, but I caught up in the summers, the first 2 summers. And by the end of that second summer, I'd been all the way through trig, calculus 1 through 4, and differential equations. So I had a steep hill to climb in mathematics. But I was also taking physics. You take all your physics, your chemistry, all your pre-engineering curriculum, your first 2 years. And then I transferred to Mississippi State. Had some great professors up there. That's when you really dive into the engineering level classes. Right. And that's when I really I knew I loved engineering at that point because it sort of came naturally to me. I was kind of structural engineering, bridges and concrete and steel design, structural design, all that kind of stuff. And so had a lot of great professors. Dr. Cole, I remember Dr. Cole was just, he was very hard. But his classes were you walked at his class either knowing it or not knowing it. Right. Because he was going to teach it. And and I had a lot of just great mentors along the way in college. Mm-hmm. And then I came to what was called the Waterways Experiment Station. It wasn't ERDC in December 1983.
The theme this season is the collaborative impact. So what brought you to ERDC, as you were saying, and what were those few years like for you?
Yes. Well, as I was saying earlier, I graduated in December of '83, and just for context, back then the economy wasn't doing very well. It was improving actually by '83, but in the late '70s, early '80s, you might have read about it. There was fuel crisis. There was interest rates were double digit if you want to buy a house. Mm-hmm. Unemployment was double digit. So I was graduating at a time when jobs were kind of hard to come by. So I had great grades. And I thought I was going to go back and work with my dad, in South Mississippi, but he didn't need an engineer. I mean, he was a contractor. He was building stuff. And I thought I'd have all these great offers, and I had a lot of great interviews. I had great grades, but I ended up getting one job offer from this guy. And I had an in-person interview with somebody, and I just had a lot of interviews. Mm-hmm. But finally I get this phone call, and it was a guy down in Vicksburg at a place called Waterways Experiment Station. So Army Corps of Engineers, Waterways Experiment Station, Geotechnical Lab, Pavements Division, Vicksburg, Mississippi.
At that point, where did he get your name?
Yeah, you submit? So I'd had the interview at college, and I guess they gathered up all the resumes.
Okay, gotcha.
And so they took him back to Vicksburg, and they said, okay, who wants who, kind of thing. Right. And I guess he got my name. There's a lot of miracles that happen in my life, and I can't explain.
Everything is supposed to happen. I'm just saying.
Everything has a reason, right? Everything. So he found my resume, apparently, and I had a telephone number, and he called me somehow. I mean, there's no cell phone.
On a landline and everything.
Exactly, right. He found me somehow, and I got on the phone with him, and he offered me a job. I'm like, where was this again, Vicksburg? And I was, polite, of course, and I said, yes, sir, I appreciate it very much. I was kind of hoping I'd get closer to Beaumont again. I mean, I knew there was stuff maybe in Mobile, Alabama, International Paper, anywhere. Who needs an engineer? Hattiesburg would have been ideal, but there was nothing in Hattiesburg. Right. So it's the only guy that offered me a job. So bottom line is, it's the only job offer I got. And even though I didn't really plan on coming here, didn't really want to go with Army Corps of Engineers, all this kind of stuff, I said yes because I needed a job, and that's the honest truth. Right. And so I came here, and it just so happened at around that time, it was either that December of '83, December the 19th of 1983, by the way, like 6 days before Christmas. A bunch of us started that day. They had already hired a bunch the previous May from my class basically, and then some hired the next May. So in that period, there's about 17 of us hired between Waterway Experiment Station, the division headquarters, which is here, of course, and then the Vicksburg district. So there was a bunch of my classmates that showed up in December of '83 around that time, and so we were all, young, single guys, mostly a few ladies back then, and just came to Vicksburg, Mississippi to start working with the Corps of Engineers. And that's kind of how it came together.
That's a great story. That's a great story. So now, from a leadership perspective, how do collaborations shape the work we do each day? Why is it so important for us to work with others outside of our own gate?
Yes. So when I got here, I mean, it was like, some of the world experts. I met the guy who interviewed me, by the way. His name was Tim Voller. The Vollers are very famous here in Vicksburg.
I know that last name.
Yeah. Tim was a pavements guy like me. I was hired into the pavement system division. And Tom White, by the way, is the guy who hired me. And to this day, I owe my career to Tom White and Tim Voller, really, for coming to ERDC and the Waterways Experiment Station back then. And so I got there, and I'm really working around legends in the field. And when I got there, I didn't really I think I'll be here just long enough to find another job. This was not what I was looking for, but the people were so nice, and working with legends. And it took me a little while because I'm a little slow. That my boss came to me, the division chief. The guy had hired me on the phone, and he said, "David, we have a project for you. We got something we want you to do." I said, "Okay, sir, what is it?" Because I'd been studying manuals and all that kind of stuff. I was ready to do something. And he said, "We got this thing called roller compacted concrete pavements." I said, "Okay, sir, what is that?"
Wait, is there an acronym? There has to be an acronym.
RCC.
There you go.
Exactly, RCC. And I said, "Well, what is it, sir?" And he says, "Well, son, we don't know. That's what you're going to find out." And I said, "Okay, very good." He said, "Go meet this guy, meet this person, meet this." And it just set me off. That set off my research career for my first 10 or 11 years. I ended up getting a master's in that. I traveled the world, became an expert on that, got my PhD in that.
Fantastic.
University of Texas. And so it kind of set me off. But back to the collaboration piece. So I learned how ERDC or West did it. We have never worked alone, right?
Right.
Even inside the gate, even in a division like a pavements division is kind of a specialty. One of the first people he told me to go meet was the guys in the concrete branch because it was concrete pavements, right? And so even within a lab, I learned at that early point that everything's not just in your branch or division. There's other groups inside of the organization itself that you need to work on, particularly as the projects get bigger. And then other labs, back then, before ERDC, Waterways Experiment Station had a commander. We were on command. Searle had its own command. Crail had its own command. The Geospatial Research Lab, as we call it now, they were all separate. And then, so we, even working across those labs, now we're ERDC, okay? So I learned that working internally collaboratively was important, but then working with people outside of ERDC was extremely important. I was working a lot with the Air Force, with the Army itself. I spent a lot of time in Europe, and people that needed what we were doing are partnering with us on working with industry. I joined the American Concrete Institute, for instance. That's an industry group for concrete, all things concrete. Concrete's the most ubiquitous building material in the world. So they actually had committees just on concrete pavements, which was my thing. That's where I met people, universities, industry around us. So I learned very early that collaboration and partnership with others was key to doing whatever we did. And it always been that way since 1929. But just learning that and understanding that you can't do it all yourself, and you shouldn't do it all yourself, and we never have done it all ourselves.
Right.
And the importance of collaborating in partnership is key to success.
Well, one of my favorite acronyms is TEAM. Together, everyone achieves more. And that's so, that's it, and it speaks the truth. It really
exactly,
does.
Yes.
It really does. So as ERDC's director, how do you foster a culture of collaboration and innovation within the organization?
Well, so it was bred into me from the very beginning, right? We got to work. Remember that first conversation? Go see these guys in concrete materials, and the longer you work, the bigger the projects usually get. The more aware you are about what you're doing and its impact on the world. And so, from a very early age, I was taught that, hey, we're going to work with these guys in the Air Force and the Army and others, and we talked about it all the time. And so as I, became further up in the organization, director of a lab and then director of ERDC, it's just kind of in our culture. So we talk about it all the time. And I think this generation in particular, they were just born to be collaborative. I mean, it wasn't like back in 1983 when I started that we didn't know how, but it probably wasn't first nature to us, maybe in a way. Well, today I think it's just the way this generation is coming along. It's kind of, we're all connected socially. We're all connected through, social media and other kind of things. So people are much more have a bent for collaboration just to begin with, teamwork, collaboration, that sort of thing. And so it's not very hard to say, look, I'm glad you are because we got to be. We have to be internally, working with teams, and then we obviously want to partner with people outside of ERDC to get the big things done that we do. It's part of our DNA. Right,
exactly. How has your vision for ERDC evolved, and what has been some key milestones in this journey?
Yes, well, that's a great question. So I started in '83, and the journey eventually led me to be director of the Geotech and Structures Lab, and around early 2000, something like that. But 2005, I was the SES director, and then became deputy director in 2015. So by 2017, I'd kind of been around ERDC for 30 or more years by that point. And but becoming ERDC director is a whole different game.
It really is.
Yes, exactly. Now you're in charge of the whole thing, and so and obviously I knew all my colleagues, all the lab directors. I was working for the ERDC director, it was Jeff Holland at the time, who had basically got me up to be his deputy director for a couple of years, and then I was lucky enough to become the ERDC director. I mean, that's like, pinch myself kind of job, and that's the job I'm in now. So when I started, I had a good sense of what ERDC was and what they did, and we'd come up with this tagline, that we a world-class R&D organization that discovers, develops, and delivers new ways to make the world safer and better every day. So I kind of had my mindset. I knew that's what we did, and we were doing that well. But on the day that I became the director of ERDC, the ceremony, General Semonite, who was the chief of engineers at the time, came up to me, and he sort of grabbed me, and he was a very powerful, energetic guy, and he had just a way with words. And he says, David, I want you to bring the power of ERDC to everything we do in the Army Corps of Engineers. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, yes, sir, yes, that's absolutely. But I said, that's genius, because by that point, ERDC, we'd formed between all the, the 7 labs across 4 states and our headquarters, and we were kind of jamming as being an ERDC. But our work was really spread across not just the Corps of Engineers, but the Army itself. As a matter of fact, most of our work wasn't for the Corps of Engineers itself.
Right.
And it was for the Army, it was for the Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Department of Defense, and other agencies, even internationally. And so when he said that, it really got my focus on, okay, how can ERDC really help the Corps of Engineers more? We already were. We were helping civil works military programs. But it really said, hey, I like the way he's talking about the power of ERDC. It was like a force multiplier to the Corps, and he asked me that as chief of engineers. I said, okay. So that got me thinking, okay, what can we do more in the ERDC to support the mothership itself? I mean, we are part of the Corps of Engineers, and that was the origin of Waterway Experiment Station back in 1929, was fighting floods. Right. Forming under the Mississippi Valley Division was kind of our mother organization at the time. So then a couple of years later, we get a new chief of engineers, General Spellman. So
I know him.
You know him, exactly. Yeah, you interviewed him, but we interviewed him a couple of times. And so, and his huge emphasis was R&D. He actually he was number 56, the 56th chief engineer, or 55th, sorry, yes. 55th chief engineers. And he said, David, we're going to take R&D to the next level. And what he meant by that, he said, we're actually going to make R&D not just ERDC. We're all going to think about R&D as a Corps of Engineers, chief of engineers, all my commanders. He said, I want everybody in the Corps of Engineers to speak R&D as easily as they could speak civil works, which is the main mission of the Corps, of course, and military programs, which is kind of our military construction mission. And I thought, wow, that's kind of taking it to the next level. And just understand, you know this, Annette, probably, but when you became director of ERDC, it was true with Dr. Houston, it was true with Dr. Holland, true with me. You actually wear a second hat. you're actually the Director of Research and Development for the Army Corps of Engineers.
Right.
So that's like the chief staff, basically, Washington, D.C. type role. So that's where we really started thinking, okay, we don't want to just help the Corps be successful. The Corps of Engineers needs us to be successful.
Right.
And they're going to be asking, hey, how can we do these things faster, cheaper, better, safer than ever before? That was the definition of winning.
Right.
Was, deliver quality projects on time within budget, safer, right?
Right.
So that just really raised the level. And now we got even like S&T cadre members, we call them. These are experts inside the divisions, work for the divisions, and they come to ERDC or elsewhere and say, hey, how can we bring in this new technology to help us do what we do today? Well, now I got another boss. He's number 56, is General Graham. He just changed command with General Spellman about a month ago. And he said, okay, he has 3 major priorities. It's called today, tomorrow, always. Real simple to remember. Today, it's deliver the program, just like General Spellman talked about. We have over a $90 billion program now between civil and military work that we have to do in the Corps. How do we deliver that? That's what the American people trust us to do. That's what the taxpayers pay us to do. Tomorrow's innovate. So he's thinking, how do we do things differently, better, right? And not just technology, by the way, business processes, leadership. How do we do things, in my lingo, faster, cheaper, better, and safer than ever before? So do things differently in a new way to accomplish, number one, again, deliver the program.
Right.
And then third, always, is about people. It's about you. It's about me. It's about how do we then make sure that we're ready, we're hired, we're trained, we're developed, to do the work of number one and number two. And our safety, of course, and all that. And so innovation always starts with people. So it really all made sense. And so now it's really taking what he and General Spellman and others helped develop over General Spellman's tenure, say, now how do we put it into practice?
Into practice, right.
Yeah. So now it's really focused on that big program, and this is part of the program now. It's how we think about how we deliver things. So that evolution, just in my tenure over the last 7 or 8 years, has happened. I didn't go into my tenure thinking that was going to be true.
Right.
But now that's just kind of how it's progressed over time, and it's been magnificent. The growth has been tremendous. Our program's grown. Our innovation, I think the Corps of Engineers is now one of the most innovative organizations in the United States Army, and it's just going to get better. And so it's been magnificent to watch that journey.
Well, and just a fun fact. So working hard as we do to tell the ERDC story, and as we started this radio show, this show right now is the 60th show that we just letting you know
Really?
that you were on the 60th show. Yes, sir. So
Yes.
as we've worked hard to tell this story and how important it is to what we do to discover, develop, and deliver solutions to our nation's toughest challenges and to make the world safer and better. So anyway, just wanted to let you know that
Number 60.
this is number 60.
That's a good number for me, 60.
So as you've always worked hard to do that under your leadership, this is what we have done to help tell that story. So that being said, as we look ahead, what upcoming projects or initiatives are you most excited about, and how do you see collaboration playing a role in their success?
Well, that's great, and I'm excited about a lot of stuff. By the way, I tell people that there's never been a better time to be in research and development in the Corps of Engineers. It's exciting. There's so many new developments. I mean, I can just kind of go around the horn. I'll start with the Information Technology Lab. Some of the fastest supercomputers in the world, really leading the Department of Defense in supercomputing. And applying that AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, digital engineering, generative engineering, it's the way of the world now. And we have some of the top engineers and scientists in the world working on the most problems right now. So think of how we might design and build 5 or 10 years from now, new dams, new levees. I mean, these things can be generated almost for us using artificial intelligence, using engineering principles and design principles. I believe, this is just personally, we'll need a human in the loop for a long time. I mean, the role of the engineer is going to be more important, but the tools that we'll have to help us in engineering and science are just going to be so much more advanced. It's like jumping from a slide rule to a calculator. The first time we had a calculator, it's like, wow, it's now computers and supercomputers and AI and ML and all that. So it's just a journey of using these new advanced tools to do the sort of thing we do. That's just information technology.
That's
lab.
just number one of 7.
I know. I got a story here. So Searle up in Champaign, Illinois, I mean, 3D printing of buildings. Are you kidding me? Concrete? That's kind of my thing is concrete pavements.
Right.
And to see them actually print, it looks almost like if you're decorating a cake. You
Yeah,
ever see
I've
those
seen
squeeze,
it. It's amazing.
Squeeze those little stuff coming out, and they'll squeeze out of a tube basically this concrete and print a building out on the ground. I mean, in front of you, and it's just amazing. It's concrete. The cool thing about that is not just the construction technique. That's amazing. Now you can do it in any shape. So you'll see walls that are curved, or architecturally look fantastic, but you can also make buildings more efficient that way. It's just from an architectural and a design standpoint, you don't need as much material necessarily to accomplish the same thing. The challenge is, of course, besides the technology itself, is the engineering standards associated with that. When I was taking engineering design for concrete, nobody imagined printing out a curved shape and how do you build a wall out of that. It's usually forms are straight, walls are straight, they're thick. So all the concrete design that we learned in college is kind of thrown out the window because this new construction technique doesn't follow the same rules. So that's our Champaign lab. Up at our co-regions lab, we just hosted a big workshop last week to introduce maybe our most exciting research and development area in the future. It's called ICE. It's basically all about cold. It's about the Arctic. So we have a co-regions lab in New Hampshire, world experts for over 50 years in understanding the Arctic and ice and ground conditions and permafrost. And now as extreme environments change over time, permafrost is melting, the Northwest Passage would be what people have longed for hundreds of years, going north of Canada instead of going through the Panama Canal, which we built 100 years ago, the Corps of Engineers built it, or going around South America. Maybe we could go around North America and shorten that path between the Atlantic and the Pacific. That's very possible now. I mean, that might be possible in the future. So are we ready for that? Are we ready to build ports? Are we ready to understand the ice? And just many examples, and it's going to involve every lab in ERDC as a research and development area.
That's where collaboration comes into play.
Exactly, right. And not just every lab, but a lot of agencies like National Science Foundation and NOAA and a lot of partners out there, again, partnership to get these things done, much bigger than ERDC.
Right.
Our geospatial research lab, we just had a young man. This is the lab in Alexandria, Virginia. They're the mapping experts in the world. This young man, PhD, he was going to go to a base in North Carolina to do a secret classified communication with others around the world on his research project. Well, he happened to be there a week or two after Hurricane Helene. A lot of damage in North Carolina. And they were just meeting at this particular location he happened to show up at on how do we recover from the damage caused by Helene. So he goes in there and he sees General Dan Hemner. He's the division commander for South Atlantic Division based out of Atlanta. Happened to be there the same day, and they're looking at how are we coordinating things in North Carolina for recovery. So the guy walks in, they're talking about his research and stuff, and he said, look, I think I can actually help you do rapid debris assessment estimations, like how much debris, how much damage has occurred over very large areas using satellite imagery and quantify that very quickly. That's one of the major roles of the Corps is get rid of the debris first and then help reconstruct. I mean, that's a perfect example of that kind of capability.
Right.
Coming back to Vicksburg, in our coastal hydraulics lab, they're going to come up with something called continental scale modeling. So when we think about the Mississippi River, the Missouri River, Ohio River, our models for that are some of the best in the world, but they're totally inadequate to really model like a flood like 2 days from now or 10 days from now or 50 days from now. Like if you tune into the Weather Channel can say, looks like, Mississippi might be getting some rain a week from now or 2 weeks from now, or modeling hurricanes. So the Weather Service, obviously the weather drives a lot of floods and that sort of thing.
Right.
So are we as good at predicting floods as the Weather Service is predicting rain? See? So how can we get just that good? And I want to know if Annette's backyard is going to have 1 inch in it, 3 inches, 6 inches, and I want to give her a week's heads up on that. We're not there. We can't do that yet, right? Because our models, the most sophisticated in the world, just aren't advanced enough to do that. And these things are all connected. So Your backyard is connected to Nebraska because it's the whole same river.
It kind of is. I live at Eagle Lake. So.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you know this, right? The same thing.
Right.
You know, in our geotech and structures lab, that's a lab that I sort of grew up in. A lot of cool things happen there, of course, but some of the coolest things are with partners, with DHS, Department of Homeland Security. We actually had capabilities at this year's Super Bowl at Las Vegas, and then we went to Indianapolis 500 in May. We're working with DHS to develop protective systems for crowd protection, basically. They call it soft target protection, but generally a terrorist will want to attack large groups of people, like in iconic events, because it's symbolic.
Right.
And our people in the Geotech and Structural Lab working with DHS to develop some of the most advanced protective devices for protecting people. This is the American public against guys that would do us harm. That's some of the coolest things in the world. There's much more that we're going to do there on the protection side in GSL. In Environmental Lab, we got some of the coolest things going on, something called Engineering with Nature. It's a big deal now. It's worldwide. But using nature itself, like we have these things called mangroves, right? Mangroves are plants. They're on the coast. They're usually around Florida. And now, with the weather changing the way it is, they're kind of sort of going more north. So they're spreading along the Gulf Coast. They're spreading along the Atlantic coast. Well, how can we use those, that nature-based feature, if you will, to help protect the coast? We had a major hurricane hit the Eglin Air Force Base and Tyndall Air Force Base, Tyndall, just a few years ago. What if we had had a nature-based feature out there with islands and features along the coast to help protect the surge heights and the waves from, wiping out one of our biggest Air Force bases, in the United States? And now they're rebuilding it using these sort of principles. And then finally, our headquarters group itself at ERDC, I'd call it like the 8th lab in a way. It's our biggest group, and it has people like me and you, working headquarters, but we also have our shops in our Department of Public Works, some of the best craftsmen in the world.
They really are.
Yes, and if you remember COVID-19, everybody remembers that, the COVID-19 response, the Corps was tasked with coming up with ways of building like hospitals and rapid ways of treating. We didn't have enough hospitals.
Right.
We needed a lot more capacity. So not only were we building alternative care facilities, we called them, turning hotels into hospitals and arenas into hospitals, our guys in our own Department of Public Works, we'd worked off some plans that were being developed at a Huntsville engineering center to turn the portable storage units, you see them on TV all the time. You put them in your driveway, you put all your crap in there, and then they take it away. They turned one of those units into a hospital room in 24 hours. I mean, they shipped the plans here. I called our guys up and said, hey, can y'all build this? They said, yeah, overnight.
Right.
They built the very first one. That's innovation across every organization inside of ERDC. And we did none of that without partners to get it done. So that's what excites me. And and I gave you just a few examples in that. There's hundreds of examples like that. The future is so bright. We gotta buy some better shades.
There you go. And the fun part about it is that through all these different episodes in these 4 seasons, we've interviewed so many of the people from all these labs, and we're telling the story. So that was a great summary of the labs and what they do. And so when you look back on your career, here's a tough one. I know. What are you most proud of?
Oh, that's not tough. Just the people. I mean, when I go around and I see, people's faces light up about what they did and then what it meant. The passion they have, and it's not just the cool thing they did. We got robots. Well, I didn't talk about robots at all, hardly. The things that they do, but it's the connection back to the effects that it's having.
Right.
So when we say we make the world safer and better, we're literally saving lives with the technology that we're building. And when we get a testimony, the hair's raised on my arms right now. We get a testimony from a soldier in Afghanistan, Iraq, or wherever they are in the world. Hey, what you did saved my life. Right, saved my soldiers' lives. You protected our people. People did not die because of what you did.
Right.
When we're doing things like removing harmful algal blooms, right? This is like that sludge, that green or red messy stuff that gets in lakes and gets around Tampa Bay. It's in the water. They call it harmful algal blooms for a reason, right? You can literally it can harm you, allergically from breathing. It actually kill you in some extreme cases. Getting that stuff out of the water, detecting it, mitigating it, getting it out in a safe way. You don't make the problem worse as you're trying to make it better. That kind of thing has impact on people's lives, right? So and when I see the people, when they know that and when they see that, it just gives them a passion about what they do. It gives them
You can't teach passion, by the way.
You can't teach passion. I mean, it's just like naturally in you. And we have a way of attracting some of the best people in the world. And I think that's kind of why. The things that we get to do for this country. I call it Disney World for Engineers and Scientists, by the way, and that's the reason, right? Is that we do things here that are so incredible. They're almost unbelievable.
Right.
But then I always say the difference is between ERDC and Disney World is that ERDC, the magic is real. We're using physics and science and engineering and all that. I mean, we're actually making these things that seem to be impossible actually possible.
Right.
And the impact it has is incredible.
Fantastic. So, finally, this is going to be deep now. What advice would you give to young engineers who are just starting out, especially those interested in pursuing a career in research and development?
That's a great question. I actually get it all the time, and I thought about it. I always go back to when I started here, and remember, I didn't really want to come here,
right?
And I took the job because it was a JOB, and they did the job.
Right.
All my friends were coming here. That made it easier. I mean,
right.
a lot of my friends were, but I just didn't know anything about the place, and I have so many miracles in my life, and that I cannot explain them except as miracles. And God, it's a God thing. But I learned this much later. Okay, so when I started that first day back in 1983, did I ever imagine I'd be the director of ERDC one day? No. Negative. That was like negative probably. It was never going to happen. I didn't even imagine that. But I look back, but I am now. So how did that happen? So there's the only way I can explain it besides miracles, and that's true, is that there's something you can do yourself to actually help yourself, no matter what your career choice is, by the way. I hope you come to ERDC, by the way, if you're an engineer or scientist, you want to work with us. We're recruiting, by the way, we're hiring. But no matter what you do in your life, I mean, if you're a baker, if you're a pianist, I don't care what your career is or field is, there's a formula out there. I'm an engineer, but it's easy. It's easy.
Okay.
Yeah, success is when preparation meets opportunity. I learned this later, by the way.
Okay.
And then I looked at my life and I said, yeah, that's probably what happened. And here's how it works. You actually control the two variables, by the way. So the preparation is all about preparing yourself for something new, for something different. So obviously when you go to school, when you go to college maybe, when you take different assignments, you do some training, you're always developing yourself. You're always learning. You're always trying to, learn something new that would add value to society in some way.
Right.
That's the preparation piece. And the more you do, the more that circle gets bigger. Your preparation bubble, in a way, gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time. So if you don't ever want to learn anything, you want to stay stagnant, you want to just, your bubble gets smaller, right? So you want that bubble to get big. The second one, which you also control, is the opportunity space. Think of that as a different job or a different assignment. And if there's only one job in the world, that's what I want to be, that leader of that team, or I want to be that branch chief, or I want to be that baker in that shop, or
right.
whatever that job is. If there's only one of them, well, that's a binary thing. Either you're going to get that job or you're not going to get that job. The probability, that circle is not very big. That bubble is not very big.
Right.
And so, but what if there's two jobs you would consider? What if I'll be a baker in that shop or that shop? Or maybe there's a bunch of bakeries around. Well, maybe I'll go in any way. Well, your bubbles will start increasing, see?
Right.
Or maybe I'll go to another state. Or maybe instead of a baker, I'll be a cook. Or I'll be a whatever, or I'll try different things. So the more opportunity space, more things that you could do out there, the more you consider that space gets bigger. And so then the formula is then, if you think about those two bubbles or circles colliding together, the more they overlap, that intersection between preparation and opportunity is where success is. So the more bigger those circles get, the bigger that intersection gets. And I guess that's kind of what happened in my life. I was doing it without even thinking about it,
right.
I guess. I was getting trained. I got my master's degree. I didn't want to get a master's degree. I never wanted to go back to college again. But my boss said, hey, we got you signed up for your first graduate class. On my first day, he told me that. I'm like, what? But I said yes. I could have said no.
Right.
But I said yes. And I did it without even realizing that how much, I mean, I knew it wasn't a bad thing. I just didn't want to do it. Then the PhD, I got my PhD, and that just added more things. And then different assignments. I went to Afghanistan, you know. I mean, I didn't have to do that, but I said yes. And took developmental assignments in Washington, D.C. So I didn't do that. I didn't have that formula back in 1983 or 84. I didn't understand. But looking back now and trying to see how do I tie that day at 1983 to today, that I would tell anybody, no matter what your job is, that's probably what helped me along the way, besides God, you know, and the miracles, of course. But that's the advice I give to a young person. If I would have known that back in 1983, at least, I don't know if it would have changed anything, but it would have given me some sense of, wow, you know, that's how things might work out. And I can control both of these variables. Then you still have to do it, right? But just that knowledge up front, that's the gift I would give to somebody who's just starting in their career, no matter what it is. Just think about those kind of things, preparing yourself, and don't be afraid to take an opportunity that you might not have thought of. But sometimes when people that care about you or love you or interested in you as a person, they might suggest something for you that you would never have guessed yourself. Think about it. Don't automatically say no. Give it some thought, and sometimes just jump off that little cliff and see what it is, you know. And
life is not about being on automatic pilot. You got to take the wheel.
You got to take the wheel. Yeah, exactly. You got to take the wheel. And so that's the best way I can describe it. I guess it kind of worked for me, and I would suggest people to at least think about that as you go forward.
Absolutely. Well, sir, it's been a pleasure. And is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close?
Yes. Well, thank you, Annette, for episode number 60. You've done this 60 times.
60, absolutely.
And you do a lot for us, too, as well. You were just at AUSA last week. I mean, a big event in Washington, D.C., talking to our generals.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah, one of the biggest Army meetings in the world. And you're like a star out there. You're a superstar. So thank you for helping us to tell our story.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's another huge secret to our success.